This is the Amazon 1 month overview reading for the month of January 2024. It's currently November 21st, 2023, 2:43 p.m. Eastern Time. Amazon at the time of this reading is currently $143.10. That's USD. And the shuffle video we're going to play for you in just a moment here was created on October 25th, 2023 at 1:59 p.m. Eastern Time. That's this video here in the corner. So the overall theme and behavior for Amazon in January, the fortune card as a theme card can indicate quite a few different things. From a standpoint of the theme card, it probably means a bit of like swinging back and forth. It could also be indicating a highest high. My sense is that it's not a highest high, it's more of a back and forth, and there's probably a reversal in here that's really going to stand out amongst other reversals on like a 1-year chart scale. It's crossed with a period of volatility and a sharp drop that stands out in that period of volatility. Behavior around the highest high, we have a lot of volatility moving into and out of the high, a lot of price change to move into the high, but volatility, like erratic back and forth behavior as we move in one direction, probably to the upside. And then behavior around the low, the change card in the low position could indicate that we see the low twice, but really what's going on with the change card is that you have equal amounts of bulls and bears inflow and outflow. So you see price swings, but they're like equal, they kind of like cancel each other out in a lot of cases, and you end up pretty much moving just sideways flat. It's not flat though, it's like swings, but you end up flat for the day or something like that, you know. That goes well with the story of the fortune card being about price swinging. Before we go any further, though, I want to make sure everybody's aware the whole purpose of the channel is to transmute some of the competitive energy of the stock market into goodwill. You do so here on the resources tab of our website, Tarot for Traders, where you should be following the rule of karma. So there's a rule of karma for the channel, and it's really the unwritten agreement between the universe and those of you utilizing this information for profit. In order to continue profiting, you must show the universe that you mean to do well do good things with this money. It should not be just about you. If it's just about you, the universe will shut you off like that. All right, I'm just telling you. So make sure that you include helping other people in your wealth creation, and you should be good. And this guarantees that. So 5% of the profits of each profitable trade should be donated forward to one of these charities here. Just click on a link and donate. Super easy, and you're in essence transmuting competitive energy of the stock market into goodwill, making the world a better place. Be a part of the cure for cancer. And then 5% of the profit should be donated back to the channel here through one of these links. That helps support the channel, says thank you, and it keeps the gratitude mentality, which is necessary for manifesting more wealth. So that leaves you at 90%. Make sure to spend that 90% out of love. As long as you follow those rules, you follow the rule of karma for the channel, the universe is going to send it back to you tenfold for being an angel investor. Let's get back into it. It's important to understand that when you're reading one of these 1 months, each of these cards going across, they're numbered. These are the dates. They each represent a day, and that's the date that they represent, right? But what you need to understand is that not each card's energy is going to line up perfectly with one day of time. So you have to allow for a little bit of wiggle room. The sequence of events remains accurate even when timing varies a little bit. For the most of these readings, the timing will be on point, like miraculously on point, but there are cases where we're off a little bit. So give it a plus or minus one day wiggle room. Trade responsibly if you plan to trade with this information, because we are not right all the time. So okay, so we have off on the first for the new year, and then on the second there's an important range that's highlighted on a 1 month chart scale minimum, and there's also a reversal there as indicated by the orange highlight. A prominent peak. I'm seeing a prominent peak here on around like the second and the third on a lot of January readings, and I'm seeing it here as well. Here, a prominent peak on the cusp of the second, third, and then maybe again in the morning on the third. But a pretty notable drop from that peak on the third, creating a trough either on the third or continuing into the fourth to create a trough. And a lot of price change between the third and the fourth, fifth, right? We go from like this trough that's either on the third, we go from a peak on the cusp of the second, third into a trough on the third or fourth. On the fourth, we also should see a prominent peak, so we'll attempt to establish support at a prominent peak. And then it looks like we decline further with a sharp drop midday on the fifth, and overall like a decline increasing with momentum moving forward throughout the day into that low. And then there's a resistance, like a minor peak that'll stand out towards the end of the day on the fifth at a key resistance. On the eighth, we open higher, and then there's a big move to the upside that'll really stand out on a 1 month chart scale minimum. There's a trade opportunity there between the fifth and the eighth. I'll talk about that in more detail in the paid version. And there's a prominent peak here on the 8th as well that'll stand out on a 1 month chart. On the 9th, brief peak that's easily missed, followed by a decline through multiple support levels. I think that brief peak is probably created there on the 8th, and we decline off of that. It's brief, and we decline off of it into the 9th, where we should see prominent troughs. A lot of volatility on the 10th, and a fast sudden move higher marking the end of that volatility. A notable move higher starting at the beginning of the day on the 11th. We move through resistance, we stay above it briefly, and then we break back down through the same price level shortly thereafter. Continue with sideways rotation on the 12th. That sideways rotation ends with a fast sudden move higher. It actually looks like we have a sharp drop at the end of the day to a trough there on the 12th. And that fast sudden move higher is probably over the holiday, because we have Martin Luther King Day off here on the 15th. There's either a big move higher right at the start of the day on the 16th, or there's a big move over the weekend, or over the holiday, I should say. On the 16th, we successfully turn resistance relevant on a 1 month chart scale into new support, and we rally on the 17th along a diagonal trend line. About midday, there's a big move higher, a breakout even, and then we turn around and we decline through that diagonal trend line with increasing volatility on the way down. So we create a peak there on the 17th, and then there's a prominent reversal taking us into a significant trough on the cusp of the 17th to 18th, probably on the 18th. Multiple failed attempts to break through key resistance on the 19th, probably a higher open on the 22nd, but in either case, there's a fast sudden move higher on a 1 month chart scale on the 22nd, and a peak early in the day, that prominent peak that'll stand out. We decline from that prominent peak. It's possible that we have another prominent peak early in the day on the 23rd. It's hard to say. It's either we're declining from that, or we're declining from the peak from the 22nd. Hard to say, but we decline pretty notably on the 23rd into the 24th, where we had some sideways rotation, establishing support, and then a big move higher standing out on a one month chart scale. another peak midday on the 25th, and this will be at a resistance level that's relatively important on a 1-month chart scale, and you'll see that price action will kind of like flatten out around that resistance, and then we'll have bumping along resistance sideways, maybe breaking through resistance, bumping along resistance, breaking through resistance on the 26th, kind of going on there. And I think the 26th is probably the peak at the end of the day. There is probably higher than the peak that we have midday on the 25th. On the 26th, we have another prominent peak and a prominent trough. It looks like the prominent trough's either at the end of the day on the 26th or it's at the beginning of the day on the 29th. Hard to say. But there's also a prominent peak in there on the 29th when we have a failed attempt to break through key resistance and then decline through key support, taking us into another prominent trough in the morning on the 30th. There'll be 3 pokes through the same price level followed by a sharp drop on the 30th. We'll probably open higher on the 31st and then decline again from like a peak early, late morning session, decline from a peak there. Pretty notable decline early in the morning on the 31st, but the 31st we declined to revisit a support level that was recently visited once before. It's probably like support from like around the 23rd, 24th, or over here on the 17th to 18th. We'll talk about that in more detail in the paid version. Let's take a look and see how we're doing for November thus far. So I did the same thing on this reading that I did on a lot of the November readings. I saw the low on the 3rd, and it ended up being on the 1st in almost all cases, so I was off a couple of days there. Not my best work. Occasionally I'm off by 2 days, but most of the time I'm right on, and then sometimes it's plus or minus a day. Very rarely do we see plus 2 days, but it happens. In any case, I still got the low at the beginning of the month, and the highs towards the end of the month, right? We have a high on the 8th, 9th. You can see here on the 8th, right? And then we have a little bit of a decline, and then we move back to highs around the 14th, 15th, right? A prominent peak. And then another prominent trough on the 16th, as indicated here on the cusp of the 15th, 16th. Another prominent peak on the 17th. And then it looks like we'll be in higher price levels on the 22nd tomorrow, and probably on the 24th, and that's where we'll probably establish the highest high for the month of November. But this is looking like a pretty solid reading, guys. All right, guys, so there's a cross-reading congruency that gives me a pretty good indication of where we are in the timeline of the 10-year reading. And for 2024, it looks like we're still in this, we're actually initiating this strife energy, which is a rally, because it's the theme card here is the strife card. So that's a pretty big indication. That's where we are in the sequence of events. You have to give the 10 years plus or minus a year, roughly. And so there's a fast sun move higher that comes after that, but we should see rallying into resistance and then breaking down with consecutively lower spikes up, right? It's crossed with a prominent move higher and then a full retracement of that move. So what I would be looking to do is trade around the January high. There's 2 things that you could do there. You could open up a short position there and close the short towards the end of the month, like around the 30th, probably 30th or the 31st. Or in the midst of that decline, you could open up a long position in anticipation of the same high or a higher high taking place in February. And the high and the low are going to be within close time proximity. It's very possible that we have a high in here, like a high on a 10-year scale there. That could be here around this abundance, but in any case, what we're looking for here is 2 opportunities: open up a short, close it in the same month, and open up a long in the midst of that decline, probably when you close the short, and utilize the price level of the January high to close out in February at that price level as the exit. We might go higher, but to be safe, the smart thing to do would be to exit at that price level. If I'm looking to get into a long position, I probably open up a partial here on the 23rd, and then if we go lower on the 30th or the 31st, I'd buy more of a long position in anticipation of that high coming in February. There's a pretty juicy trade here in this big move higher where we establish support on the 16th. Like, you could probably get into a long position in the morning here if we don't gap up too high on the 16th. You could open up a long position and hold it, close it when we have that fast sun move higher ending the rally along the diagonal trend line taking place midday on the 17th. And when I have that fast sun move higher, you can open up a short and close that short the following day. There'll be some price swinging going on here, so you should have some pretty significant opportunity. Also on the 23rd, you could open up a long and close it at key resistance on a multi-day chart there midday on the 25th. And if I'm wrong about the 25th, on the 26th, you could do it probably at a higher price level. And so this big move higher on the 8th, you could open up a short probably midday, and it's a brief peak that's easily missed, and close that short the following day towards the early afternoon session after a decline through multiple supports. If I'm wrong about that, then you can hold it until the 12th, a trough at the end of the day. If I'm wrong about that, you could close out of it here on the 18th, most likely. Also on the 5th, in the midst of that decline, sharp drop late morning session, you could open up a long position and close that long position midday on the 8th when we have that big move to the upside, to that brief peak. As far as highest highs, lowest lows, so I think the highest high is probably here on the 8th, 9th. We have a highest high kind of energy going on here as well around the 2nd, 3rd, but I think that this one here will probably be slightly higher on the 8th, 9th. Sharp drop around the 11th, or from the 9th into the 11th, maybe somewhere around there, around the 10th, 11th, somewhere. And then most likely some sort of trough or low here around the 17th, 18th. I'm seeing a low in a lot of January readings there, and then a lowest low here. So this will probably be a lowest low thus far around the 17th, 18th, and then a lower low here on the 30th. Well, this will be a pretty notable low, and then probably a lowest low, if not the same low, here on the 30th. Not really getting any price level information, but as far as performance against the S&P 500, it looks like it's roughly the same kind of performance. Either that or the S&P outperforms slightly, but it looks like it's probably around the same performance as Amazon throughout January. And that's Amazon for January 2024. Thank you so much, my friends, for your support. Blessings to all my angel investors. You know what to do. You know where to go. I'll see you guys on the next one.